Happy Monday, everyone. Today is the eve of the Taurus new moon, which is going to take place tomorrow morning. And the energy is really surging today. I was talking about it earlier this morning, and I'm really, really speedy inside, and I'm catching myself having to take deep breaths. And also I was feeling some anxiety this morning. Anxiety being an energy surge in the solar plexus that humans attach thought to, which we call anxiety. So I was feeling the feelings of anxiety, not feeling anxiety, I should say. I have been working to ground that energy out this morning, and I wanted to share something with you. I read from some books that resonate with me occasionally, and someone handed me a book a couple of days ago, and it was one of those moments. Um, I am really into neuroscience and the human mind and our thought processes and how that affects us on an energetic level. And this book explains that, and it's called Becoming Supernatural. And the first chapter, I read the first 4 pages last night. And this book is by Dr. Joe Dispenza. And after the first 4 pages, I was so excited because I knew that this was the book for me, because I'm starting to come full circle into diving back into researching more about the brain and go deeper on a molecular level within our minds. So this is perfect timing, and I wanted to read the first 4 pages to you. Chapter 1 in this book is called Opening the Door to the Supernatural. And of course, this is about the brain and our emotions, and because that's how we open the door to the other side. So it says, as spring was ending and the first glimpse of summer was approaching, what first appeared to be a typical Sunday afternoon in June 2007 turned out to be anything but typical for Anna Willems. The French doors from the living room to the garden were open wide, and the thin white curtains danced lightly in the breeze as scents from the garden floated inside. Streams of sunlight shone brightly all around Anna as she lounged comfortably. A chorus of birds chirped and trilled outside, an instant melody of children's laughter and playful splashing coming from a neighbor's swimming pool. Anna's 12-year-old son reclined on the sofa reading a book, and she could hear her 11-year-old daughter in the room directly above her singing to herself as she played. A psychotherapist, Anna worked as a manager and board member for a major psychiatric institution in Amsterdam, whose patients totaled more than 10 million, whose profits totaled more than 10 million euros annually. She often caught up on professional reading on the weekends, and on this day, she was sitting in her red leather chair reading a journal article. Little did Anna know what looked like the perfect world to anyone peering into her living room that day would become a nightmare within minutes. Anna felt a bit distracted, noticing her attention wasn't fully engaged in the material she was attempting to study. She set her papers down and paused, suddenly wondering again where her husband had gone. He had left the house early that morning while she was taking a shower. Without saying a word or where he was headed, he simply disappeared. The children had told her that their father had said goodbye, giving each of them a big hug before he left. She tried to reach him on his cell phone several times, and he hadn't returned her calls. She tried one more time, no answer. Something definitely felt odd. At 3:30 p.m., the doorbell rang when Anna opened the front door, and she found 2 police officers standing outside. "Are you Miss Willems?" one of them asked. When she confirmed that she was indeed Miss Willems, the officers asked if they could come in and talk to her. Concerned and a bit confused, she complied. Then they delivered the news. Earlier that morning, her husband had jumped off of one of the tallest buildings in the center of the city. Not surprisingly, the fall was fatal. Anna and her 2 children sat in shock and disbelief. Anna's breath momentarily stopped as she then grasped for air and started to shake uncontrollably. The moment seemed frozen in time. While her children sat paralyzed in shock, Anna tried to hide her pain and stress for their sakes. As intense pain suddenly shot through her head and simultaneously felt a deep, hollow ache in her gut, her neck and shoulders instantly stiffened as her mind frantically raced from thought to thought. The hormones of stress had overtaken her. Anna was now in survival mode. So this section now talks about how stress hormones take over and how trauma and past and our thought processes all activate that energetic programming from situations. So it says, from a scientific standpoint, living in stress is living in survival. When we perceive a stressful circumstance that threatens us in some way, one from which we cannot predict or control the outcome, the primitive nervous system, called the sympathetic nervous system, turns on and the body mobilizes an enormous amount of energy in response to the stressor. Physiologically, the body is automatically tapping into the sources it will need to deal with the current danger. The pupils dilate so we can see better. The heart rate and respiratory rate increases so we can run, fight, or hide. More glucose is released into the bloodstream to make more energy available in our cells, and our blood flow is shunted to the extremities and away from our internal organs so we can move quickly if need to. The immune system initially dials up and then dials down as adrenals and cortisol floods the muscles, providing a rush of energy to either escape or fend off the stressor. Circulation moves out of our rational forebrain and is instead relayed to our hindbrain, so we have less capacity to think creatively and instead rely on more of our instinct to instantly react. In Anna's case, the most stressful news of her father's suicide threw her brain and body into just such a state of survival. In short term, all organisms can tolerate adverse conditions by fighting, hiding, and fleeing from an impending stressor. All of us are built for dealing with short-term bursts of stress. But when the stress doesn't end within hours, the body never returns to balance. In truth, no organism in nature can endure living in emergency mode for extended periods of time. Because of our large brains, human beings are capable of thinking about their problems, reliving past events, or even forecasting future worst-case scenario situations, and thus turning on the cascade of stress chemicals by thought alone. We knock our brains and bodies out of normal physiology just by thinking about an all too familiar past or trying to control an unpredictable future. Every day, Anna relived that event over and over in her mind. What she didn't realize was that her body did not know the difference between the original event that was created and she did not know the difference between the original event that created the stress response and the memory of the event, which created the same emotions as the life experience all over again. Anna was producing the same chemistry in her brain and body as if the event were actually happening again and again. Subsequently, her brain was continuously wiring the event into her memory bank, aka the subconscious mind, and her body was emotionally experiencing the same chemicals from the past at least 100 times each day. By repeatedly recalling the experience, she was unintentionally anchoring her brain and body to the past. Emotions are the chemical consequences or feedback of past experiences. As our senses record incoming information from the environment, clusters of neurons organize into networks. When they freeze into a pattern, the brain makes a chemical that is then sent throughout the entire body. That chemical is called an emotion. When we remember events better, We remember events better when we can remember how they feel. The stronger the emotional quotient from any event, either good or bad, the stronger the change in our internal chemistry. When we notice a significant change inside of us, the brain pays attention to whoever or whatever is causing the change outside of us, and it takes a snapshot of the outer experience. That's called a memory. Therefore, the memory of an event can be branded neurologically in the brain, and that scene becomes frozen in time in our gray matter, just as it did for Anna. The combination of various people or objects at a particular time and place from that stressful experience is etched in our neural architecture as a holographic image. That's how we create a long-term memory. Therefore, the experience becomes imprinted in the neural circuitry as the emotion is stored in the body. And that's how our past becomes our biology, aka our DNA. In other words, when we experience a traumatic event, we tend to think neurologically within the circuitry of that experience, and we tend to feel chemically within the boundaries of the emotions from the event. So our entire state of being, how we think and how we feel, becomes biologically stuck in the past. As you can imagine, Anna was feeling a rush of negative emotions: tremendous sadness, pain, victimization, grief, guilt, shame, despair, anger, hatred, frustration, resentment, shock, fear, anxiety, worry, overwhelm, anguish, hopelessness, powerless, isolation, loneliness, disbelief, and betrayal. And none of those emotions dissipated quickly. As Anna analyzed her life within the emotions of the past, she kept suffering more and more because she couldn't think greater than how she was because she could not think greater than how she constantly felt. And since emotions are a record of the past, she was thinking in the past, and every day she felt worse. As a psychotherapist, she could rationally and intellectually understand what was happening to her, but all her insight couldn't get beyond her suffering. People in her life started treating her as the person who had lost her husband, and that became her new identity. As she associated her memories and feelings with the reason she was in her present state. When anyone asked her why she felt so bad, she told the story of the suicide, each time reliving the pain, anguish, and suffering all over again. All along, Anna kept firing the same circuits in her brain and reproducing the same emotions, conditioning her brain and body further into the past. Every day she was thinking and acting and feeling as if the past were still alive. And since how we think, how we act, and how we feel is our personality. Anna's personality was completely created by the past. From a biological standpoint, and repeatedly telling the narrative of her husband's suicide, Anna literally couldn't get beyond what had happened. And so, as you can see, the first four pages of this book is just, it blew my mind away because our thought processes lay out the grid of energy that we project on the outside of our bodies, but it also creates the internal circuitry of our flow, of our energy, of our activated chi, or whatever we want to call it. It becomes who we are, who we subconsciously then begin relating to. Our flows of life become adaptive around that form of circuitry that's stuck in the back of the mind, that is the fight or flight versus this being in the front, where, that is our emotional state to be able to get quiet and meditate and deal with what is actually happening versus always reacting to the energetic surge. Just as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, today is very high energy in the solar plexus, and it's just surging up through my body. And instead of me latching on to my emotional thoughts that were attached to that feeling at first, I was quickly reminded that I am not my thoughts or my feelings. I am experiencing them, and it is my choice to do with it what I feel. In this human existence, we are receiving and sending energy in our sleep, when we're awake, when we're thinking, when we're listening to music, when we're talking. Everything we do, we are projecting energy. So, being mindful of that influence, of how that affects our own body, our own mind, and those around us, we that sets a different level of consciousness that allows the human to become authentic, and it creates a space of comfortability for others around us to then open up to their natural state of who they are. And we learn to do that by the mastery of our feels. I talk a lot about the feels. The feels are the energetic pulls or surges that we feel that we can then choose to place thought to. Now, of course, it's a different dance when we are engaging with other people, because we are then balancing our own energy as a reaction to theirs most of the time, until we become, until we calm down and get quiet and learn to master the reaction. And that is an evolving cycle. That doesn't stop overnight, because everyone is different, and the fields of energy that we receive every day is different, and the way we feel about things changes every day. So we really have to be as loose in our thoughts as we are with other people, because we have two different kinds of thoughts. We think, that's our humanistic form of being here to create and problem solve and those type things. But we also have the channeled messages. Those are the things that we listen to. And so if you're not sure what I'm talking about, then maybe you're not in a place of being mindful of the thought processes at this point. I was not mindful of my thought processes the way I am now. So this is something I've been activated and learned to begin doing. And so it's really just about getting quiet and slowing down and listening versus being reactionary. That's how I learned to remain in a meditative state of mind, even if I feel a jolt of someone's energy, like before I respond. It's about slowing it down. Like I say, there is no perfection other than the perfection of awareness. So, even though I have all of this knowledge of self and these things, I still practice them every day. So, just to know that the kingdom of heaven, as we like to call it, is in awareness. It's in clarity, not living in a state of happiness all of the time. When we recognize that things are energy shifts, that we are respondent to the moon transmissions from each sign that we're in, without attaching to the humanistic thought processes. Like for me, I get outside of myself and other humans. When I'm in a state of not understanding what my mind is doing, I'll step outside of it. Like I'll imagine myself like zoom on the outside of the earth and look down on top of the earth, and I realize that my thought processes really are just small within me, even though they set such a huge frequency. And going, like imagining myself going outside of the earth to look down really helps me come back in and get more grounded. So I'm able to then like just take a breath and realize that this life is just part of an existence. And, it really is about just doing what feels good, and shifting through the things that don't. And so anyway, for those of you that are just tuning in, I was just reading the first 4 pages out of this book, Becoming Supernatural by Dr. Joe Dispenza. It's really, really great. I'm diving back into learning more about the brain and the thought processes and the energy that we receive. And so, while we get pretty astral with our cosmic selves, it's important to remember to be grounded in this humanistic experience. And so I'm coming back around full circle now, I feel. So anyway, I just wanted to share these few pages with you and talk a little bit about thought processes. Oh, and something else I was thinking about making a video about the other day was talking about confidence. Someone commented something, and I don't really recall what it is now, but it made me think about confidence and what confidence is. And it falls right in line with this book because it's all about our thought processes. Confidence is something that we have to force ourselves into a lot of the time. The whole fake it till you make it thing, I think that totally applies with confidence because I have to push myself past the fear of judgment of others, which is insecurity, which comes from places that are just within me mostly at this point. It's not because of what someone else says or does, it's my own internal unawareness or whatever we want to call it. It's just a cycle of being human. And so, like for me, um, when I'm feeling good and open and my heart chakra's open and I walk into a building or a room or there's a bunch of people and I want to be open and engaging, I walk in, I feel in a very confident manner. I'm open and alert and smiling and my head's up and I'm looking people in their eye, and that's confidence and that lights up a room. Now, there are times when I am feeling more introverted and I walk in and I don't look up and I'm looking down, and some people may notice me, some people may not. It's because I'm having an off day, but people notice. So when you have that awareness of being able to choose when to do that, then we feel more confident in public than feeling insecure or, just not wanting to be around a bunch of people. Because I know how energetically stimulating it can be to be around people at times. Sometimes, I'm really sensitive to the moon and my brain frequency gets in a way, maybe in the frontal lobe or something, and I'm not really feeling like engaging. So I learned to be quiet in those moments. But confidence is something that, you know, in lines with many different aspects of our lives. What we're talking about, if we're sharing knowledge and teaching people how confident we are in our rhythms. But really, it's like, how confident are you when you're by yourself? How confident are you in your thought processes? The outside world is just a reflection of how we feel on the inside and how we react to it. So if you are constantly triggered by other humans and that makes you think poorly of yourself because you think they think poorly of you, that is something of a thought process that needs to be rewritten. And we rewrite those patterns through self-talking, internal self-talking. I do that with myself. If I'm feeling really insecure about something, I give myself that own gratification, my own energy boost to myself. I just have to remind myself, like, it's okay to feel insecure, and it's okay to feel uncomfortable, because like I said, energy changes every day, and our thought processes were rewriting old patterns of programs from hurt and pain and things we've lost and let go of, and all of that stuff. So when we realize that all that stuff is just like old patterns of behavior, of old thought processes, like what I just read about in the book, if we continually perpetuate the things that we think and feel that don't feel good, it's going to continue to stay there and will continue to manifest more of that. So if you want greater things in your life, we have to start with our own thought processes. And I know that like 100%. And it's still a cycle. Like I say, it doesn't end. Like some days I really have to do a lot of self-talking, but I still know that it's just silly. I know that it's just silly. It's just this human stuff, but I allow myself to grieve or whatever it is I'm feeling. So it's about recognizing the human aspects of our existence, but then understanding that at the end of the day, it's just all energy, and the energy that we put behind the thought. Love you to the moon, family. Have a great day and enjoy the new moon tomorrow. I was reading about Taurus, and it's going to set a lot of changes in motion. So it's cool.